So today's Cartalk, I think that I'm going to go over project-based learning. Let's go and talk about it. So let's talk about what project-based learning is, what to expect with project-based learning, the realities of project-based learning, and why a lot of people don't do it. And why I do it still. Did it still while I taught. So I think that, first of all, project-based learning is when you give students a project to do, and through doing that project collaboratively or independently, they learn the topic and they learn content in the process of the project, and then the hope is that at the end of the project, they now have competency in the content that you want them to have at the end of it, in a nutshell. And the project could be do a slideshow presentation, do a diorama, do a video, a movie, a skit, do a poster. It could be a variety of different things. And I think that the first thing to just sort of lay out there is that it can be very structured and it can be very unstructured. And I think that both of those are very okay. When I think of PBL, I also think of inquiry alongside it, which is essentially students asking questions and answering questions. The whole idea of inquiry, and my idea, is that there's that essentially students are the ones asking the questions themselves. And when students are able to answer said questions, that's really powerful. So, hate that I'm diving deeper into details, but I think that what I always talk to my student teachers or the teachers about when I'm talking about project-based learning and inquiry, I then go to the levels of inquiry, okay? There's open inquiry, which essentially is the students come up with their own questions, they're creating their own projects. It's like open PBL, unstructured. They're coming up with their own solutions to their own questions they're coming up with. They're creating their own structure for it. There's guided inquiry, which essentially is like you may be providing the questions for them and then they figure out the answers, where in the project you are giving them the challenges, the questions, and this is where I find myself most of the time, where the students are finding a ways to answer the questions uniquely. And then you have structured inquiry, which could be like small blips where they're actually answering those questions answering the questions you've asked them, but within the parameters in which you give them. It's very step by step. It's very procedural. As you get into really heavy rubrics, you'll start to see this come up emergently. And I think that each of those forms of inquiry or openness, more or less, are things that you control as a teacher with your projects. And I think that when it gets to PBL, the question is, how open do you want it to be? Is there parts of it you want to be open? Are there parts of it you don't want to be open? And then really establishing that from the start. And then starting to structure backwards. And that's usually where a lot of PBL you see rubric, clear expectations, and clear outcomes that you're looking for. And starting there, I think, is a really strong point. And then typically what I would do is I usually pose the challenge, the problem, because I want to guide them to a specific direction. And then once I do that, I then build a rubric, like what are the outcomes of learning? What do I want to see in their projects that says that learning's actually happened here? And then I just let it be open. And then I will structure or guide them more as I deem necessary throughout the project. So now that that's like a brief overview, maybe very vague or clear, I don't know. I think that the next thing to talk about is just like reality and expectations. It's chaos. I think PBL in a lot of ways is controlled chaos because it's the idea that students won't know what's the most efficient thing to do, and PBL only gets less chaotic and less disruptive and less wild. The more you do it and the more your students do it, because one, you as a guide through this project-based experience become more experienced in knowing how to catch cues of, oh, my class is just distracted and lost. Oh, my class is not being productive. Oh, everyone is wasting way too much time with the colored pencils on this spot right here. And you're able to identify and create a profile of what you do like and you don't like as a teacher. And then you also learn how to be responsive to those things that you do like and you don't like effectively. That does not magically happen the first time you do PBL, and there's so many nuances and small things to it that you're just not going to know, and there's going to be a lot of unknown. And I wish I could say that there's like a class or thing to do, but it's really one of those things you just got to do it. Just realize there's going to be a whole lot of uncomfortableness, but at the end of it, your students' soft skills, independence, their ability to collaborate, ask for help, if you're coaching these things throughout, are going to go up exponentially. And by the time you've done like 4 PBLs with your class, they're like pros. You just say, hey, here's the challenge. And then they just all start moving, they start chomping. And what happens is that they start creating structure for themselves. But it's not magical. And so this is what I usually say expectation wise, is that if you look at PBL in my classroom, August, September, October, November, December, January, I really don't want you in my room. I really don't want you seeing it. It really does look like students are off task a lot, students are distracted a lot, and I let that be, and I just have a lot of reflection and redirection to get us more efficient. And as I'm like constantly instilling a sense of urgency, but by the time I'm in the next semester, like in March, you come to my classroom and you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the gold standard. Why doesn't every classroom look like this? But what you didn't understand is that you didn't see the 5 months of chaos that it took to really get there with a new class that hasn't been doing PBL. And mind you, if you're at a school that has a real culture of PBL, and when I say PBL, I mean like the more unstructured kind, where the teachers may pose the challenge or topic or prompt and the students do the rest, it's nasty at the start. It really is. And you just have to know that it's going to be nasty and look nasty. And there's like so many different facets to it, whether it be grouping, whether it be delegation of tasks. Like, are you going to give each group member a role, or are you going to say, hey, these are the 5 things that need to get done, divide and conquer, figure it out. Like how you want to go about it and how much freedom you want to give them, I feel is the important thing. And I think by the end, if you can say, hey, we're having this challenging task, these are your deadlines for these different stages, get it done, and they're just all on it, like that's the goal. So my advice, stick to it, reflect a lot, make note of what you do like and you don't like. You're the teacher. Step in and adjust when you don't like something. If you do like something, celebrate it, congratulate it, tell them how impressed you are of it, and just understand that this is a growth journey with the students. I would even say by the end of my first year doing PBL like this, it was good, you know, it was good by the end. But I would say by like my 7th year of doing PBL like this, it was good pretty quickly. I would say like by my 2nd project, it was looking like the last project for my first few classes. And that's just because I had very clear things in my mind of what I liked, I didn't like, how much off-taskness was allowed, and I feel like that was really great. So now let's talk about some of the perks of PBL, and that's classroom management. I feel like PBL is useful for all students, and I feel like especially as the roles and there's niches that can be filled or created that you weren't even aware of during project-based learning, especially the more freedom and flexibility you give students to align with their future aspirations. It also lets you sit down and get to know about your students' future aspirations, which allows you to build more connectedness with them, and then cyclically engage them more into the activity and projects that they're doing. The next thing is that you're not in front of the classroom the entire time. So on a classroom management perspective, if there's really bad behaviors, unsafe behaviors, disruptive behaviors, you can have the time and freedom to really just show your concern for those students and take care of them and address them and ask them if they need help, support, advice, if they need to go to counseling office, what you can do to support them. Like those conversations that you couldn't have otherwise, you can have now. Another thing is that it allows you as a teacher to really mold the class to individual needs. And sort of like repeating what I said previously, but really like this gives you a chance just to bounce around table by table, student by student, group by group, and really support redirecting them, and making this personalized. So as I sort of said it already, but I mean, like, you really have the time and the opportunity as a teacher to do it. And for that reason, I have to say PBL is more work than any other form of teaching, because if done right, you're typically interacting with your groups the entire time and jumping group to group and coaching and mentoring and redirecting and bouncing ideas off of them or leaving them with their group with a prompt. Now let me tell you some newbie pitfalls, like beginner pitfalls that people fall into with I see my student teachers. I've had a student teacher in my room the last 6 years full time. I've had 9 student teachers leave, and then plenty of pre-service teachers predating 7 years. And they all fall for the same pitfalls that, mind you, I did as well. Number 1, you spend too much time with a group. Time yourself and rotate. It's so easy to be caught in this cycle of you're talking to a group and you're so immersed with them, or you're trying to deal with their problem or redirect them, and that your focus goes to that one group, and then your classroom's like burning or behind you. So really limit how much time you spend with a group. Really try to like cycle the classroom. What I always recommend is a minute per group, cycle through the classroom. Let's say 8 groups, all groups of 4, 32 students. Boom, 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 boom. You should be able to do it. Adjust the math however large your class is. Alternatively, supplementary, is that be aware. There may be stuff going around you at the same time. And a student may be having their hand up for 15 minutes and you're so focused on that one group. So really, it sounds so silly, but really focus on your body posture. Is your body open to the classroom? Is it closed to the classroom? Are you proactively in that 1 minute conversation with that student or group? Are you looking around to make sure someone's not throwing paper airplanes behind you? Quite literally, what is your situational awareness so that you can redirect and also conduct a classroom while working with individual groups? Number 3, to the paper airplanes being thrown across the classroom and the hand being up for 15 minutes. Structures. What are the structures that you want in PBL that are going to make your life less stressful? Whether it be bathroom and having a clear bathroom policy because they all ask for the bathroom because it's PBL and hey, it's open-ended, so I can go. I feel like I have freedom. Flexibility. Let me use all my flexibility in your classroom now. Set expectations. Listen, if we're using the bathroom in this class every day, we're just, we're going to shift what we're doing. This is not a bathroom period. This is a classroom to do work in. So what is the expectation for that? Have a checkout process. Make it autonomous. Make it so only one person's at a time with the pass. And you have to sign up on a list if you want to go to the bathroom. And it's going to go on the order of the list. Done. Now you don't have to think about it ever again. Again, let's see another one. You can go ahead and say, so bathrooms. Another one could be just about what you do to bring the class together. This is a rule of thumb that I find all the time that happens with student teachers and new teachers when they're doing PBL. Their class is just stuck. I think that the more distracted your classroom is, the more off task your classroom is. It has to do with 2 things. It has to do with difficulty and just confusion. And if their confusion and difficulty levels are too high, either of them or both of them at the same time, what will happen is that they will devolve and just start being off task. And then classroom management becomes the problem. Mind you, AP honors, not that problem. Maybe you're at a school that's really, really focused, not a big problem. But I would find from my classroom that was a direct cry for help from my classroom and telling me that I need to go ahead and adjust and jump in. So what do? If you see, one, your classroom is getting rowdy and loud, try to figure out where they're at, where they're getting stuck, where that hurdle is. Bring the class together. Everyone turn your attention to me. Wait for the class to be completely silent. Don't jump in it too quickly. Wait for everyone to be focused. Even if that takes like a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, eventually they'll get there. But if you invest in it early, it'll be better in the long term. Wait for everyone to be focused on you, and then address where they're confused. Give some structure, give some tips, give some suggestions. That goes to number 2. So maybe they're not distracted, but you see that you went to 3 groups in that 3 minutes and they all had the same question, or hands flying up around the classroom. You're answering the same thing over and over and over and over again. If you have to repeat anything, the rule of 3 times, I'd argue in some cases, if it's obvious to you, oh, this is going to come up a bunch, 2 times, you bring the classroom together, you make an announcement, you clarify that, you give the directions, you update the directions on your webpage, on the board, wherever it might be, to get them through that clarity. That's going to be huge. Otherwise, you're going to bump into the same problems over and over and over again, and then you'll find you just spent 25 minutes repeating the same thing. I see it happen all the time. So, those are hard things to catch yourself on. And I mean, my recommendation easily is as simple and old school is, have a clipboard and time yourself, have a clipboard. How many times have I answered this thing? Have a clipboard. What are the things that are wasting my time as a teacher that are stopping me from building relationships with my students, molding this lesson to their needs? What are the roadblocks for them? And then becoming better at those things. That's what you should be addressing as a teacher. And honestly, that's why I loved it. That's probably what kept me in teaching a lot longer than I planned on staying, because it was fun, it was dynamic, it was a challenge, and I think that it was chaos. And now I see the chaos and I'm like, beautiful. But the problems that are coming up in my classroom are ones that I'm aware of and I know are going to come up. I can predict. And when they do get stuck, it's like this. I'm able to fix and adjust and we're back onto smooth sailing. PBL is uncomfortable for many years until you master it. And even once you master it, there's always going to be a new trick up the sleeve and a new adaptation needed. And you're still going to have to adapt. But the difference is that once you've mastered it, you'll feel very comfortable adjusting, adapting, and getting through those rough points more so than you did at the start. Okay? And that's a Cartalk on PBL. Hopefully some of those tips and suggestions helped it. Have a wonderful day. Like, subscribe. Please subscribe. Want some subscribers on the channel? That'd be great. And have a good one.